What is an awakened relationship to you?
What's that?
An awakened relationship.
Yes. What about an awakened relationship?
An enlightened relationship to you. Is it possible that I can experience that with my partner?
Is it possible? Yes.
Because
Sure.
we all experience in the relationships love-hate relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
So end up in divorce, separation. And I've always tell my partner how I admire you and your wife and how you guys do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there any tip?
Is there any tip? Well, like every relationship, my relationship with Mukti is simply an expression of who we both are. And it's an expression of what we both value. You know? We came together valuing our spiritual lives above and beyond anything else. That's what we valued. And we happen to value, and we happen to have that value in tandem, you know, for both of us. If one of us did and one of us didn't, then it would be a different looking relationship, right? So it, first of all, of course, takes two people that have that that similar orientation. The funny thing is I wouldn't have the slightest idea how to go about doing sort of an awakened or enlightened relationship. I wouldn't even know what one actually is. Right? All I know is the one I've got. Right? And I would hesitate to put any, I don't even know what label I would put on it. We do share the same spiritual orientation, yes. But you see, it didn't become that way because of sort of something we did. Do you know what I mean? Something it's just an expression of who we were even before we met each other.
Okay, one more.
It's a very unsatisfying response, I'm sure, but I often say to people, I'll say to you, that, and I say this in all honesty, people generally don't believe me. I say that I'm not necessarily an expert at sort of the whole romantic relationship thing. And the reason I don't feel like I'm that much of an expert is because a couple of reasons. Number one, I do not understand the basis of probably 95% of the relationships that I see. I literally don't get it. I just do not understand it. And what I mean that I don't understand is it's very rare to find two people who are in relationship together that their basic, and it's actually true, their basic orientation is that they both completely and totally accept each other exactly the way they are right now. Not who they could be. So you're not falling in love with potential, right? But if you really look at that, you're right. Now, how many people do you know that actually do that? You see what I mean? Therefore, I don't understand 95% of relationships. Because for me, I'd be like, well, why in the hell would you be in a relationship then?
I see.
Like, what would be the point? I don't even understand. So that puts me at a great disadvantage when you don't understand how most people are doing something. That's my own shortcoming in that regard. And the other thing is, I do believe, it's been my observation, that we have the most to offer in the things that we've often had to struggle through the hardest. You know, the things that you've really had to find your way, you've really had to work, they were real challenges for you, that when it all is said and done, if you find your way through, then you know some really important things that you can share with other people, right? Romantic relationship wasn't one of those places for me. I'm not saying that I was some saintly guy in terms of romantic relationships, but they never were they weren't the avenue that I had to really, do a lot of hard work. And that's extremely true with my relationship with my wife, Mukti. And so because we haven't had to do a lot of really hard work, that gives you a certain kind of experience. Do you know what I mean? It's just like if somebody fell off a turnip truck and all of a sudden they were enlightened. And they said, well, how did you do it? And they said, well, I just fell off a turnip truck. Like, well, you're really enlightened and everything, but you really don't have much useful to say about it, do you? No, I just fell off a turnip truck, for God's sake. And I'm a little bit in a relationship world. I'm kind of like a relational guy that fell off a turnip truck. And so I literally, and I'm being very honest, so therefore I'm not even sure that I have as much to offer in that domain of human experience, because I haven't had to work at it really hard. So I don't even get a lot of the sticking places. I get them intellectually, and I see people go through them, but they're not, like I said, without that first thing that I don't understand, why wouldn't two people, why, like I said, I just don't understand that basis where two people are actually kind of like, well, I love you, honey, but secretly I'm kind of waiting for a few things to change. Well, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with changing and evolving. Hopefully every relationship does change and it does evolve, and
Yes.
All those things happen, and you can work. I'm not saying that you just, okay, we are who we are and that's it, and you never work anything out, or you never. That's not what I don't intend to imply that.
Okay.
But, it seems like if the basis of love is I think the basis of love is, at least in part, grows out of really, truly accepting someone the way they are. And that's not just our lovers, that's our friends. And at least in this culture, parents. Most people I meet are still in an argument with mom or dad or both, no matter what the age they are. Because they haven't got to the place of letting their parents just be actually who they are.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so you see, when we don't do that, which doesn't mean we have to agree with the way somebody is, or like it,
Yes.
or even decide to put up with it if it's really unhealthy. It just means that can we just actually see each other clearly?
Yes, I was inspired by what you said about you find it, very mysterious about your wife. So it's just kind of okay, how's that working?
It's working great for me.
Okay.
I think both of us.
It amazes me, and I wish I could also experience that someday.
You can. All you have to do is just, first of all, you just start with what you got. Okay, I know somebody. I have their experience. I have memories of them, all that. Okay. Then if you just kind of, okay, and that's it. Okay, I know all that. Now, is that who that person is entirely? Are they simply the person that I know them as? Do I know them completely and entirely? And I think most people, if they look at that for even a moment, they go, I actually don't. I know them as well as I know them. But I don't maybe not know them. I always find there's something intangible with every single person I meet. And it's that untangible unknowability that's actually, I think, where the deepest kind of connection is. I went, and an example to give that a little more practical reality, this is going back some years ago. And I went through a phase and I can still go back there anytime I want to go in my consciousness. It's sort of almost like a little channel I can go back to. But I went through this phase for probably 2 or 3 years and this is where all this started, that I kind of talk about not knowing somebody, even when you know them well. And I just woke up one morning and I could see something about Mukti that I'd noticed before, but not deeply noticed. And what I'd noticed was I almost started to see and experience her archetypal form. So for me, the experience was, to boil it down into something every day, the experience was that I hesitate to say this because of what people's mind make out of it, but I literally felt, and for those 2 or 3 years, what was the predominant I had to remind myself that she was also a human with a personality. Because what I would see and experience when I was with her was I felt like I was literally with sort of the divine feminine. Like literally almost like the divine mother. And I could see that in her. And it wasn't that she changed her behavior. Nothing had changed except what I could see. And so it was literally like I was sort of living, and I don't mean this in the modern vernacular, I just don't know a better way to put it, but it was almost like living with a, God, I don't want to say this, because of what happens in people's minds, but it was literally like living with a goddess, in the deepest meaning, not the sort of, goddess sort of, but the really deep. It's like when you, and this isn't, it's like when when we really peer beneath the surface presentation of anybody. And now I've had this not only with Mukti, but with lots and lots of people since then. When we really peer beneath the surface of each other, we touch into this extraordinary sacred dimension. And it feels timeless. And it has a kind of sense of meaning that's just unimaginable. You can't even say what the meaning is, but you feel it. And this is really kind of touching in with each other's true nature, right? Which is literally touching in with something that's quite literally divine. So for those like 2 or 3 years, the divine quality was, for whatever reason, was so pronounced that sometimes I'd have to kind of blink my eyes and go, oh, okay. And she's also a human being. Because I kept seeing God. But it overwhelmed everything else for a while. And now it's kind of, it's all one thing, that the humanity and the divine quality, and it's all sort of one mix. But at that time it was sort of, like I said, there were almost like different channels I could tap into. Okay. So that's where I first started to mention, like, yeah, there is something about each other that's not in the known dimension in the sense of personality type and, all that kind of stuff that we know, that if we can just peer right through that, there's something extraordinary, with everybody. And I've seen this with the most, from personalities that are as far away from being, quote, spiritual as you could ever imagine. I've spotted it. I can see it in them. It's quite, and I think this gives a whole different dimension to any relationship. Mm-hmm. It's, sure, we also still have the very ordinary human sort of relational stuff that happens too, but boy, when it's functioning in a ground where you're kind of in touch with someone's divinity, that puts a whole different spin on everything. Whole different, you're literally living in a different atmosphere. Okay. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm excited
to
experience it with my partner.
And anybody can do it. The key is, the key is to realize it's okay to see the total mundane, ordinary person that and you've had experience with. You go, okay, why don't you just make that totally okay? Like, it's almost like that's their sort of psychic pair of clothing almost. You go, okay. And as soon as you're not looking to that, then it's like, then you can kind of see through it. As soon as you make it okay and you accept it, what people do is like, oh, I want to see God in my beloved. And, and so they're seeing these human elements and they're trying to, push them aside to see something else. No, it's right through the human elements. Mm-hmm. It's right through the ordinary human elements, but it's almost like your consciousness just doesn't stop there. It just keeps going. And boy, it's just a matter of just pay attention to anybody that you know really well. Mm-hmm. One day, just say, okay, for a half hour, I'm just going to not even say anything, but I'm really going to pay attention to them in a way that I might never have done before. Okay. And I'm just going to feel into them. And you might really surprise yourself.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. I will.